A 7-month pregnant Filipino woman boarded a train to Stuttgart this week, not for a vacation, not to see the sights, to watch a 20-year-old tennis player from Manila compete in the first round of a WTA 500 tournament. Let that detail sit with you for a moment, because nothing else I'm about to say will make sense until it does. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, one of the most prestigious indoor clay events in women's tennis, a tournament steeped in the legacy of Navratilova, Graf, and Sharapova, just welcomed Alexandra Eala into its main gala. She wasn't supposed to be here. She entered as an alternate, a late replacement for China's Zheng Qinwen, who pulled out with an injury. And then, 5 days later, the world's #1, Aryna Sabalenka, withdrew too, an undisclosed injury sustained after sweeping the Sunshine Double in Indian Wells and Miami. The tournament lost 2 headline players in the span of a week. What it gained, though it may not have fully understood it at the time, was a commercial and cultural earthquake already in motion. Here's what the WTA's own communications team published when confirming Eala's entry. Alexandra Eala replaces Zheng in the main draw. Unfortunately, Qinwen has to withdraw due to injury, but fans can now look forward to seeing Alexandra step in. 14 words of standard issue administrative language. Clean, forgettable. And yet those 14 words triggered a chain of events that no one inside that organization had the framework to properly anticipate. Tickets for Eala sessions reportedly sold out. A video surfaced on ABS-CN News showing the pregnant fan and her friend traveling across the country to be there. Social media timelines in Manila, Dubai, London, Los Angeles, anywhere the Filipino diaspora lives and breathes, erupted not with casual interest, but with military-grade logistical coordination. Flights booked, accommodation secured, flags packed, cheering strategies discussed in group chats moving faster than the tournament's own digital team could monitor. This was not a surprise to anyone who had been paying attention in 2026. This was a pattern simply arriving at its next destination. Rewind to Indian Wells in March. When Eala's name appeared in that draw, ticket resale prices spiked into the hundreds. She defeated Jasmine Paolini, the world #8, outright, then took a set off Coco Gauff before Gauff retired. A player ranked outside the top 40 was commanding the kind of ticket demand and broadcast attention normally reserved for Grand Slam quarterfinals. In Linz just last week, reports surfaced of Filipino supporters making up an overwhelming majority of the crowd for her matches. In Miami, the same pattern. In Dubai, where she also knocked off a top 30 opponent, the same commercial footprint expanded again. Each stop bigger than the last, each crowd louder, each data point harder for the institutional tennis world to explain away as a novelty.
And now Stuttgart, where Elena Rybakina holds the #1 seed, where Iga Swiatek is launching her European clay campaign under new coaching guidance from Carlos Moya's former associate, where Coco Gauff, Jasmine Paolini, Elena Svitolina, and Mira Andreeva fill out a draw that reads like a who's who of the current top 10. By every traditional metric the WTA has relied on for 3 decades, Alex Eala, world #45, a first-time visitor to this tournament, a player who had never set foot on the Porsche Arena clay until last weekend, should be the smallest story in this bracket. She is the biggest story in this bracket, and it is not particularly close. The WTA itself seemed to sense this. On Sunday, the day before the tournament began, they published a feature-length sit-down interview with Eala on their official website, a level of editorial attention they reserve for players they recognize as commercially significant, regardless of seeding. In that interview, Eala was disarmingly candid. She talked about arriving in Stuttgart for the first time after watching highlights of this tournament online for years. It's crazy when you're able to see something on TV a lot and you're able to see it in person, she said. It finishes the puzzle. She talked about the attention, the media, the exposure, and how it sometimes threatens to become overwhelming. If you don't have that spoonful of gratitude or you don't have a clear idea of who you are, you can get lost in all these things. And she talked about what the Filipino community means to her, not in rehearsed promotional language, but with genuine warmth. We are quite positive people. We're very fun, outgoing. I think we have a really strong sense of community. Even myself, when I see a Filipino out and about wherever in the world, I'll know right away that they're Filipino. That community followed her to Stuttgart, and it did not come quietly. But here is where the narrative requires honesty, not just celebration. Because Alex Eala's 2026 season has been a study in contradictions. Her record stands at 15 wins and 9 losses heading into Stuttgart. She reached a career high of world #29 in mid-March, a genuine breakthrough that placed her name alongside the established elite, and then slid back. The Miami Open, where she failed to replicate last year's semifinal run, cost her 270 ranking points. In Linz, her first tournament on clay this season, she beat the home favorite Julia Grabber in the first round and then ran into Jelena Ostapenko in the second. She had chances. She led late in the second set. She could not close. Ostapenko took it 6-4, 7-5, and Eala's clay debut ended before it really started. More troubling is the specific vulnerability that the data reveals. Against players ranked above her, Eala's record in 2026 is 2 wins and 5 losses. The 2 wins, Paulini and Dubai, Gauff via retirement in Indian Wells, were legitimate scalps, proof that she belongs in the conversation. But the 5 losses, Alexandrova, Gauff in a rematch, Noskova, Muchova, and Ostapenko, tell a parallel story. She can compete with the elite. She cannot yet consistently finish them off. Her Stuttgart draw was a direct examination of that exact question. Across the net in the first round stood Leylah Fernandez, world number 25, a 5-time WTA title winner, a former U.S. Open finalist at 19, and a player whose mother is Filipino-Canadian. This was not just a first-round tennis match. This was a cultural event. 2 left-handed players with Filipino heritage meeting for the first time in their careers inside one of the sport's most storied venues. The Filipino community, for once, had a representative on both sides of the net, and in the days leading up to it, something remarkable happened behind the scenes. Eala practiced at the Porsche Arena with Coco Gauff, a full practice match, point by point, captured on video and viewed by hundreds of thousands of Filipino fans online. After their session, Gauff was overheard telling German player Eva Liss, "Have you ever trained with her? She's tough. I do it practically at every tournament." Then Eala practiced with Swiatek, the number 3 player in the world, 2 practice partners from the absolute summit of women's tennis, both voluntarily hitting with a player ranked 45th, and both acknowledging, publicly, privately, wherever the cameras caught them, that she is not someone to take lightly. That validation matters. Rankings measure the past. Practice court respect measures what the people who actually play this sport believe about the future, and they believe Eala is going somewhere. The question was always whether she could prove it when the scoreboard was live. On Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, inside the Porsche Arena, the match began. Fernandez won the toss and elected to serve. And what followed was a first set that exposed every tension in the Eala narrative simultaneously. Fernandez, experienced, composed, tactically precise, broke early and kept breaking. She raced to a 5-0 lead while Eala's first serve percentage collapsed and unforced errors mounted. The arena, packed with Filipino flags and thunderous support, went quiet in patches, the kind of silence that only committed fans experience when reality is not matching the story they traveled thousands of miles to witness.
This is the space where something real lives, not in the promotional clips or the ticket sale headlines or the breathless YouTube thumbnails, in the uncomfortable gap between a movement's belief and the scoreboard's indifference. In a 20-year-old standing on clay she has barely touched, in a country she arrived in 4 days ago, against an opponent who has played a U.S. Open final, and watching the first set slip away without ever getting traction. The result of this specific match, whatever it ultimately reads, does not define what is happening in Stuttgart this week, because what is happening in Stuttgart this week is not about a single match. It is about the moment when the professional tennis establishment was forced to confront a question it has been avoiding since January. What happens when a player's commercial gravity, cultural significance, and fan base mobilization power all dramatically outpace her ranking? That question does not go away after one first-round result. It accelerates. Madrid is next, then Rome, then Roland Garros. 4 consecutive stages on European clay, each larger than the last, each watched by more people, each with more money at stake. And at every single one of those stops, the same thing will happen. The same ticket surges, the same diaspora activation, the same tournament directors realizing that the most commercially significant player in their draw is not wearing a top 8 seed. The sport has never had to process this before, not at this scale, not at this speed, not with this level of organizational sophistication from the fan base driving it. The WTA's ranking system was designed to measure competitive results. It was not designed to measure what Alex Eala generates when she enters a building. And that gap, between what the system measures and what the market reveals, is where the future of professional tennis is quietly being rewritten. She arrived as an alternate. She practiced with the number 2 and number 3 players in the world, and they told people she was tough. A pregnant woman took a train across Germany to watch her play. Tickets sold out. The WTA published a feature article about her before she had hit a single competitive ball on their clay. Coco Gauff called her a regular practice partner. Iga Swiatek shared a court with her voluntarily. And somewhere in Manila at midnight, millions of people were still awake, still watching, still believing that the 20-year-old with a spoonful of gratitude and a nation behind her was exactly where she was supposed to be. Stuttgart never knew what it signed up for. Neither did the rest of the clay season. But it is here now, and it is not going home.